I'm Bronte, and this is what's in my bag. Oh, look at there! It's the X-Vive XV1R. This is a great little portable stereo recorder, but it can also be used as an interface. X-Vive sent this to me to try out, so I did just that. We had a little safari walking around the video studio and recorded a few samples using just this and some headphones, and here's what we came up with.
Kaffee 3.
So stick around if you want to find out how we produced this little snippet. Now before we get to the recording and the producing part, let's take a look at what we're working with here. First of all, they did not lie when they said this was a portable stereo recorder. It does fit into my tiny little handbag, and it's also super light. The layout is pretty simple, which I really like. Let's turn it on. Here on the display, we can monitor the playback, the input gain, and the volume. We can also easily navigate through the different settings. The power switch is here on the right, and it has a slide and hold mechanism, which is great because if you accidentally bump it, you won't accidentally turn off your field recorder. The same switch can also be used as a lock when pushed upward. With this lock, you can lock all of the other buttons on the recorder as well, so you won't hit those accidentally either. Fantastic. What else is on the right? Well, we have a delete button in case you recorded something that you don't like. There's also the memory card slot and a 3.5mm line input. On the left side, we have a 3.5mm line out, which I used for headphones, for example. And here are volume controls for this line out. On the bottom of the X-Vive, there is a USB-C connector, so you can connect it to your computer, your laptop, your phone, or any other smart device. And then you can access the files on the X-Vive straight from your computer, for example. Or you can use the X-Vive as its own interface. To use the X-Vive as an interface, you just have to choose USB mode when switching it on. And you do not need an extra driver to use it as an interface. And the star of the show is here on top, of course, where we have two condenser mics pointing in different directions. With this, we can record up to 96 kilohertz and in 24 or 32-bit. With 32-bit, you don't really have to worry about your gain input anymore, which is really awesome if you're like us and you want to record some percussive sounds that have really loud, strong transients. The X-Vive also has built-in effects, like a compressor, a limiter, and a low cut, just to name a few. And now for the next 12 hours, we're gonna record some samples. Just kidding, we're not gonna do that, but technically we could record up to 12 hours with this. Now let's go record and produce something using the X-Vive. I'm using Logic Pro X for this, and I'll only be using free stock plugins. Now the first thing we need is something that sounds like a bass drum. And when it comes to choosing sounds for a bass drum, we need something that has a strong transient, something that'll really put the kick in kick drum, but we also need some low frequencies in there for that thump. So for the bass drum sound, we're going with me hitting a box of cardboard, which sounds roughly like this. And it has a really nice punchy sound already, so we definitely have that strong transient, but we're still missing some belly. We're still missing the actual thump. Let's see how it sounds if we add some EQ and just bring up those low frequencies. Okay, that's a little better, but it's still not that low thumpy sound that I'm looking for. So let's build a bit of a bass drum body. I'm going to open a new track. Now I've opened a new track and I have imported a sound from a different time that I was hitting a cardboard box because we recorded that like 6 times. And what I'm gonna do here, so I'm actually just gonna go in and actually I'm gonna cut some of the front off. So we're going in and I'm putting a big fade here in the front. And yeah, we'll just make sure that we don't hear the transient anymore, but we still have this whole back part of the body. Command C for copy. Oh, this is too long. And then, because we don't want to layer sounds that sound the exact same, we're taking this piece of the cardboard box sample and we are tuning it down. Now let's listen to our second cardboard box, but only pitched down. Damn, that's an interesting sound. That alone is not a bass drum, but if we add that to the sample we have before, then it'll sound pretty good, I think. Okay, sounds super dirty. Let's see before and after. Yeah, turn it down a bit. Yeah, that sounds super dirty. Now let's make a hi-hat next. Open a new track. Now for the hi-hat, we're looking for something that has a higher pitch that will really keep our nice micro time, but it's not too big of a sound because it's like more in the background. Okay, let's listen to this sample real quick. Let's just copy this a bunch on every 8th note, I think. Now let's listen. Now let's just listen to this straight up as it is. Okay, that's definitely keeping the time, but it's quite harsh. So I think I'm going to play around with the EQ now until I find something that I like. I think those mid frequencies are pretty harsh. I like it better when there's a pretty extreme low cut. Still sounds a bit annoying, but it'll sound better in context. Let's work on the hi-hat some more and let's try to make it sound just a bit more natural. I'm envisioning a drummer actually playing a hi-hat and there's just so many dynamics in there, so let's try to recreate that. And here's how I go about it. I want to take every second note and I want to take down the gain a little bit. I feel like that makes a huge difference if it's not all the same volume. Now, what I also like to do is play around with the pitch because a natural hi-hat also wouldn't have the same exact pitch. We can use the fine-tuning option here, for example, and just bring it down a few cents. If you want to humanize it even more, you can keep going in and just add even more variation into the hi-hat. But I think for now, this is pretty good. Now let's go to the snare, which is kind of my favorite part, but also the hardest part a lot of the time. And now a snare sound is really defined by a very wide frequency spectrum. So it's not just low end and it's not just high end, it's kind of all over the place. But then it also needs to have a strong transient to really give you that snare hit. And to make the perfect sound for a snare, we're definitely going to have to layer some sounds. So let's start with some sounds where we can layer some different frequencies. So we're going to start with the sound of me scratching the table. Let's add another layer. Oh my God. Okay, there's a sound of me scratching the table with the fork and it hurts so much in my ear, but it'll be a good layer. Let's just turn that way down. I feel like it's kind of cool if the fork scratch doesn't come every time. And now what the snare is missing is a transient. So I went through the samples and I didn't really find anything that matched the vibe. The only sounds that we had with strong transients were the ones where I was like hitting on cardboard or hitting the table, but I feel like those sound too much like the bass drum that we have. So what I think we should do is we should just find any loud sound and then just make it so short that we just really have that loud sound for a second. So we'll kind of have a DIY homemade transient. So here's the sound of me just hitting the table with my hand. We're just gonna go in and I'm just like gonna cut away most of it. See how that sounds? Okay, now because we're pretending we have a type of drum set, right? We need it to actually be inside a room, so it sounds like an instrument. So let's build a room. For that, I will use a send effect. And I will send this entire snare track stack to bus 10. I won't send the kick. Let's pick a room, go to reverb. This is just the room. See if we can add a bass. Synthetic bass. It is a very industrial sounding drum groove, so. Oh, I think that would be cool. Damn, that's actually really cool. Wait. Yeah, of course we can keep mucking around with it. We could probably work on this all day long, but it's just supposed to be an example of what we could possibly do with the X5. And I think it already sounds pretty darn good. For the price, it sounds really great, and I can highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for a field recorder. I especially love the fact that it is so compact and light, and it fits in my handbag, which is important, you know? So if you are interested in purchasing this, I recommend Thomann for the best user experience and customer service.